I'm Vanessa Ruck, the girl on a bike. I am back in Iceland for the 4th time. There is a reason why this country is my favourite country, not only just for travelling, but massively for riding a motorcycle. Now you can see lots of different videos on my channel about my adventures in Iceland, but in this one, I'm going to be giving you some of my top tips and things that you really need to know before you come here. If you're riding in Iceland, you are going to find yourself crossing a lot of these, and that is rivers. So what you're wearing on your feet is really important. Now, a lot of people think, I know, I'll get waterproof boots. Do not do that. You do not want to come to Iceland with waterproof boots. Now, the reason why is that waterproof boots are only waterproof down here. When you are in a river crossing, above your boot, no waterproof boot is going to keep your feet dry because the water will go in over the top, and because they're waterproof, the water then won't drain out. So you do not want waterproof boots. Instead, get yourself some waterproof socks. So I wear the sealskin socks. I've also got some military issue socks, Husqvarna, lots of brands do them, but they're almost a neoprene wetsuity kind of thing. And it means that you can keep your feet dry even when everything else is getting wet. And obviously, if you go really, really deep, your waterproof socks aren't going to save you anyway. But expect to get wet feet. River crossings are a massive one that you're going to face if you are riding or adventuring in Iceland. I recommend learning a little bit about how water flows. A wide part of the river is probably going to be your best bit to cross, because when the water narrows and goes thinner, it tends to be deeper and more aggressive, but when it's wider, it tends to be a little bit shallower. So stopping and having a look before you just plow through a river crossing is going to massively, potentially save you quite a lot of upset. But if you're coming here, expect to do a lot of river crossings. You're going to get thirsty. A bonus in Iceland, it is so undisturbed and unpolluted that you can actually drink nearly all of the rivers here. I would recommend looking upstream to make sure your mate hasn't just had a pee, but you can pretty much drink the rivers with confidence. The weather is very changeable in Iceland, and it can go from sunshine to extreme sideways hail and snow in moments, so wearing the right kit is really, really critical. I do have a full video that gives you a full recommendation from head to toe on what kit to wear here, but the key thing is that you want to be warm, you want to have layers so that you can vary your temperature, and you want to be dry, so you want to get some good waterproof kit and kit that you trust. If you're here on a motorcycle, the rubber and the mousse that you're running in your tyre is really critical. Iceland is very aggressive. The lava rock is sharp and the terrain is incredibly rocky. There's a lot of rocks where I'm sure they're actually attached to Australia. They're so hard that when you hit them, it's like BAM! So making sure you've got some good solid rubber and mousse is gonna enable you to not have to worry about flats. So I'm here with RideWithLocals, and they are running the Michelin tracker tyres with a bib mousse. I'd recommend making sure you've got mousse on your motorcycle. There are loads of absolutely incredible places to stay in Iceland. Beautiful hotels with comfy beds and ensuite bathrooms and hot showers and spas. Pamper you galore. But if you're in Iceland, you've got to go basic and stay in a mountain hut. So here is an example. This is where we are staying tonight. If you do a tour with RideWithLocals, guaranteed you should be getting at least a couple of nights in mountain huts. They're basic. They have big multi-bed dorms. Some of them have hot showers. This one unfortunately doesn't have showers because the river that was here is unfortunately empty. It's been unseasonably dry in Iceland, but showers are totally overrated. By staying in mountain huts though, you get to stay in places like this. There is nothing but us. Adventurers, travellers, you've got a big glacier up in the background, mountains towering down. This is the real Iceland. Knowing where to go in Iceland, it's a big country, there's a huge amount of risk. You've got active volcanoes, you've got earthquakes, you've got geysers and spas and rivers. And so RideWithLocals are a company that I have ridden with here in Iceland before. This is my second trip with them. and they're definitely a company that I recommend as far as seeing Iceland on 2 wheels on a motorcycle. Now, there's a few reasons why I definitely think they're worth looking into. First of all, they're the only Icelandic run off-road motorcycle company here, and for me, when I'm going into a country, I really like to be able to support the local culture and not support some guy from Holland who decided that he likes Iceland and is operating tours. They are the proper, the real, the Viking way of seeing Iceland. So RideWithLocals, they do a range of different tours, shorter days to longer 6 days, which is the one I'm on, and they do some different routes. They go all the way out to the West Fjords, they do off-roading. Yeah, it's worth checking out their website to see some of the stuff they do. Supporting the locals, ride with the locals. Benefit of that is also you're getting their knowledge. They have grown up and lived in Iceland their whole lives, which means they know Iceland like the back of their hand. I don't really know the back of my hand all that well, but apparently that phrase means they know Iceland really, really well. And you're going to get that knowledge. Iceland is a huge vein network of tracks and trails. They're all over the place and they are very much not all mapped. So going with a knowledgeable company is going to enable you to have access to know which ones are passable, which ones have river crossings that are too deep to even think about on a motorcycle, all of that kind of knowledge. But something that's very, very important to know, it is completely illegal to ride off-road in Iceland. They are incredibly strict. Park rangers and guards will hunt people down, and there are huge catastrophic fines that could be quite life-changing for some people if they were to get one for going off-road. So you've got to stay on the tracks. The beautiful thing though is that off-road means off the tracks. There are huge numbers of tracks that you can very, very legally ride on, and most of the days this week, this is the final 6th day on this trip, I think the most cars or vehicles or things that we've seen in a day has been 2, and we've been on the bikes from sort of 9:30 till 5. Imagine riding off-road, there are flies, for that kind of period and seeing no one, and in like heavenly enduro terrain. That is Iceland. Riding motorcycles, we know, is a dangerous game. Riding enduro bikes in technical off-road terrain is a dangerous game, and with that, there is a very important thing about being in Iceland, and that is having the right safety, security, and comms. So with RideWithLocals, you have a support jeep. This is a bigged up wagon that can do most of the trails that we're doing, not all of them, but it means it's generally in the facility. We've had 2 injuries this week, which is why there's 3 bikes in the back, and this wagon has enabled those people to be picked up off the trail and safely taken to hospital. We then have the support wagon behind, which is the fuel. There isn't fuel out in these remote locations, but they have a big barrel on the back which enables us to fuel up the bike. But the most important thing to think about here is the communication in Iceland. It's very, very remote. You're going into incredibly rugged rural places where there is no ambulance you can just call, so making sure that you've got good communications. There's not always signal, so sat phones. The Vikings have particular special radios that are on the frequency that works all the way across Iceland. Having that comms so that should you get in trouble, you have the comms to be able to get yourself out of trouble is important. These guys are carrying med kits, all that kind of stuff. So remember, Iceland is aggressive. Communications could save lives. A massive one you're going to need if you come to Iceland at certain times of year, summer where it's warm, is going to be a fly net. You can see them around me. If you don't have one of these, they're going in your eyes, up your nose, in your ears. If you've got eyelashes like me, your eyelashes will swoop them and put them into your eyeballs. But with a net on, what flies? And you also get to look like Dorothy? And you also get to look like Dorothy the tea maid. What a bonus. A trick though, get your beer, put it inside your net, it will sit right there, and then you can get it from the outside, tip it in your mouth, and they won't go in your beer. Right, I'm using my hair as a mosquito net right now, but horses are something that you really want to be checking out when you're here in Iceland, and there's 2 ways in which horses are going to be an important one. Now, the first one is that Icelandic horse is very unique. They've got their own unique paces. They're unbelievably cute and fluffy. Look at them behind us. So going for a ride on an Icelandic horse is a must do, and it's a really lovely way to see the countryside and the scenery in a slow, easy to absorb environment, and they're just cute. One word of warning though, do not ever call them ponies. They are small, and in other parts of the world their size would make them more akin to being called a pony. They are horses, don't make that mistake. Doesn't go down too well. Now the other thing with horses in Iceland is that you need to try and eat them. They are very cute and they're fluffy, and in lots of parts of the world eating these animals isn't really something that we tend to do. However, there's a reason why when in Iceland it's part of the culture, and for me traveling around the world enjoying the different cultures is something that's really important to me. Now Iceland has brutally extreme winters. There's times of the year where the sun barely comes up and it's extreme snow, cold. Horses are actually one of the very few animals that can survive outdoors through those brutal winters. And so that's one of the reasons why it's actually one of their main meat sources, because they can withstand the environment. If you need cows, sheep, chickens, they all need to be housed and fed on pre-grown crops, etc. So horses actually are really maybe slightly more sustainable, environmental kind of option in some ways. What does horse taste like? Come to Iceland and have a try and you'll find out. I would describe it as a slightly tougher but also flavoursome version of a beef steak. But aren't they beautiful? Look at them. With all things travelling, trying out the local cultures, food, cuisines is really, really important. Iceland is no different. It has some crazy stuff. So fancy some dried fish? It's like a beef jerky but fish. My recommendation is have it with butter, and that is what the Vikings got us to do. So dried fish, you got to try it. They also have crazy things like fish and chips. You think you're a Brit and you're a fish and chip eater, and then you come to Iceland and realise you can get chips, potato with dried fish in a single packet. Iceland seems to love licorice as well. You can get all kinds of really yummy licorice, chocolate, cocoa poppy kind of treats. Here they've even got some licorice salt, but the must-have try is the horse, which I'll also mention a bit more description about, and the dried fish. Get travelling and get tasting those local cuisines.